Curt Miller is here to talk about all that is going on in the Sparks world. Locked On Women's Basketball starts now.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, hi there and welcome to Locked On Women's Basketball. I'm your host, Howard Megdal. I want to thank you for making us your first listen every day. More than 200,000 of you. In May alone, we are on track to break our audience record here in June, showing up for us the way we show up for you 6 days a week. And of course, it is not just me. It is the incredible team across the board over at The nexthoops.com, where we have over 100 reported pieces every single month. We have a dedicated reporter for each WNBA team, Cameron Ruby, the great Cameron Ruby, out in LA covering the Los Angeles Sparks. And I was, for one, delighted to see that Curt Miller, despite the fact that he is in now 5 different halls of fame, is still active and going at it. Curt, I thought you had to retire in order to get into halls of fame, the MAC being the latest.
I'm getting gray. So the old, someone asked me, these Hall of Fames, and it's like you've had what it means. 2 things to me: you should have really good players, and you're getting old when you start to get in Hall of Fames. But yeah, exciting. The MAC was so special to me. Gave me my first shot as a head coach. But even prior to that, it was my volunteer assistant coming out of undergrad. In my first opportunity, I started in the MAC as a volunteer assistant at Kent State. So full circle, the MAC was so good to me. Bowling Green was a special place. Truly humbled to be the first women's basketball coach in the MAC Hall of Fame.
258 and 92. You cannot argue with the record. Of course, one of many halls of fame, as we pointed out. You're in the Bowling Green Athletics Hall of Fame, Pennsylvania Sports Hall of Fame, Girard High School, Colorado State. It just goes on. And now this build, and it is a fascinating build. So in segment 1, talking about the Los Angeles Sparks, where they are, what is happening there, because the record is the record, but there's a lot more going on than that. So we'll be talking a lot about that, specifically a pair of precocious rookies. In segment 2, we're really going to focus in on Dearica Hamby and some of the veterans as the vision takes hold. And segment 3 is about defining success in 2024. But Curt, just on top of the show, take me through the way you're thinking of 2024 heading into it.
Yeah, excited. Obviously, going into the year, there was a lot of excitement in the offseason. Free agency took hold when the decision was made by Rickea Jackson to move on. It really helped the organization have a clear vision. When I left Connecticut after a tremendous 7 years and was looking for something, didn't have anything more to prove in terms of wins or if I could coach in this league, but always really enjoyed the build. LA was really special to me, allowing me to make the transition from the collegiate game to the pro game as an assistant in 2015. I always said, if that job was open and they came after me, it would be a hard franchise not to listen to. So I was really honored to given the opportunity to help rebuild it. Obviously, going in there in 2023, we had the great and legendary player in Rickea Jackson, and we were going to try to put tremendous pieces around her and try to make a run at some of the super teams that were forming. Obviously, with Rickea deciding to move on to Seattle, clear vision in the offseason that it was a true build now for LA. It was a rebuild. It was going to be around youth, made a trade to get a second lottery pick. And so was really excited of following the college basketball season, knowing all along that you were going to have 2 outstanding picks. So there was a lot of excitement. We knew that we were going to build around, some lottery picks and some free agents that maybe be more in prominent roles, or players asked to be in more prominent roles, and maybe not their complementary roles, which they were so outstanding in going into the season. So tons of excitement leaning into April. And then April came, the draft came, but the yin and the yang. We also got early April news that Azare Stevens had sustained a serious injury overseas, and then the killer was shortly after trading for what we perceived as our starting point guard coming into the year, and Julie Allemand really sustaining a serious injury overseas also. So was hit with that, but didn't dampen the excitement going into the draft and going into the 24 season.
It's fascinating to me. And again, we're talking a little bit about this off the air, but just the level of injuries is one thing. We could talk about the number last year and into this year, but it's also the specific areas where it's happening. Like you talked about Julie being out. Julie Allemand would be a significant help to this team that is doing some really interesting things early on, but obviously you are 12th right now in turnover percentage in the league. And so trying to find out where you get point guard play, whether it's frankly this year or in the offseason to come, is going to complement a couple of rookies that are just really standing out. So I want to start with obviously what Cameron Brink has done. And just to address, obviously real quick, we're still waiting to find out about it, but it is a heartbreaking thing, I know, for everyone watching. I just wonder what it's like as a head coach, and you have unfortunately experienced this. You've seen it up close with some of your most important players through the years. What goes through your mind when you see a player go down? How do you react to it, and how do you kind of push past that to get through the rest of the game, even coaching?
Yeah, obviously very raw still this morning, and as we have this podcast, Cameron is being evaluated currently, and so I got my phone right next to me, Howard, awaiting word on how all that evaluation turns out. But in the battle last night in Connecticut, obviously, it's a play farthest from our bench. You can't really see the awkwardness. Was it a bump? Was it an ankle? Was it a knee? So in the moment, you're trying to manage the situation. You're trying to manage emotions. Obviously, after the game, you start to learn more. You look back at the play that she was injured in, and you start, to do that. But in the moment, you're just trying to coach your way through it. And the next person up, unfortunately, as you mentioned, my 9 years as a head coach, I've had 1 year that in my 9-year head coaching career that I haven't lost a starter, at least one starter, to a serious injury. It's uncanny the amount of injuries that our league has gone through. I unfortunately have coached through it too much. And so, I become, unfortunately a little bit numb and have the angle of unintended consequences. And I look at all the success through the years of it opening the door for other players. The first major injury, Chinea Gumake, allowed us to move, Alyssa Thomas from the 3 to the 4. And now, you could argue she's the best facilitating 4 and one of the top 3 players in the world.
It's worked out for her. I agree.
It really worked out. JJ opted out of the bubble. It opened the door for Bree Jones to become an all-star and gain more and more confidence. And the list goes on and on throughout the years. And last year we had a lot of people in LA have career years. Some of that was due in part to the crazy amount of injuries that we had. And it opened the door for Carly Samuelson, who in turn got a great contract because of it. Jordan Canada had her career year. NECA had a resurgence of an unbelievable year, some of it due to the fact that we were down in numbers and had some injuries. So it really, my heart is out. Our prayer warriors are out for Cameron right now. But also I look at it as, the story quickly becomes who's this, what this opportunity potentially could open the door for someone. And last night, Peru, as a 25-year-old, 6'7", very talented young post player, really stepped up in her place. And, those are the stories of unintended consequence of injuries around our league.
No question about it. And again, in a league where opportunity is at a premium with only 12 teams in the league, those are opportunities that come up. But certainly we are all at the next and Locked On Women's Basketball hoping and wishing for the very best for Cameron Brink as well. I want to talk about some of her stats on the floor as well. Both she and Rickea Jackson are doing things right away that I think would be things that perhaps you would have hoped for later on in their careers. And I'm interested your thoughts about what that tells you about the build here in LA. So back in segment 2, talking a lot more about that with head coach Curt Miller. I'm Howard Megdal, and you're listening to Locked On Women's Basketball. Locked On Women's Basketball is brought to you by eBay Motors. And eBay Motors provides passion, drive, and patience. It's the same formula for winning championships. It's also what keeps your car alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Whether it's superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, whatever it is your car needs, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. That's very helpful to me because I don't know a thing about cars, but I need my car running to be able to get me to WNBA games to cover. So eBay Motors gives you that check mark. You look for it and you make sure you're not wasting your money. With all the parts you need at prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. So keep your car alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply, eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Locked On Women's Basketball is also brought to you by Miracle Made Sheets. And let me be clear, it is very hot here this summer. Out in California, this probably feels like a typical June, but for us, it is in the mid to upper 90s, and we are dealing with very, very hot weather. You got to make sure your sheets reflect that as well. If you wake up too hot or too cold, it is no good for anyone. So I recommend you check out Miracle Made's bed sheets. These are sheets with silver infused fabrics that are temperature regulating, so you can sleep at the perfect temperature all night long. Traditional bed sheets harbor a lot more of the bacteria as well as the heat. These sheets don't. How you want to not take my word for it, go to trymiracle.com/locked on and check it out for yourself. Again, that's trymiracle.com/locked on to try Miracle Made Sheets today. If you order today, you can save over 40% and use our promo code locked on at checkout to get 3 free towels and save an extra 20%. Again, trymiracle.com/locked on. Thank you to Miracle Made for sponsoring this episode. Back here with Curt Miller here in segment 2, and to talk about Cameron Brink, I'm just going to bring in the numbers from Eli Horowitz, the assistant GM, of course, tweeted back on June 13th that with Cameron Brink on the floor, the Sparks are number 1 in the WNBA in opponent field goal percentage in the paint and number 1 in rim deterrence. Now, we both know Cam was obviously a ridiculously effective rim protector during her time at Stanford. The question was, how quickly would that translate, especially, trying to go up against pro elite bigs? How surprising is it that somebody just 22 years old, just coming into the league, has been able to not just hold her own, but be a force defensively right away?
Yeah, Howard, it's her defensive potential and her defense, what you saw in college, is legit. She is a tremendous help side post defender. She comes over and covers a lot of grounds, and her wingspan and timing to block shots is uncanny. She can really impact rim protection. We were last in the league in rim protection last year. Cameron has helped change that and really helped us around the rim. She is a special defensive person. She also can get in a stance and slide with people. And so there's fun schemes in the long run that we think about. Obviously, the Achilles heel at that end is foul trouble. And, she's got to continue to learn when, there's plays that she's got to just let go and that she can't block every single shot. But she's a pleasure to work with at that end of the floor and, just has so much potential. Her numbers analytically in the deep dive, the really deep second spectrum and deep analytic dive defensive numbers are truly, truly comparable to people who are ultimately not only defensive players of the year in our league, but maybe multiple time defensive players of the year. They really compare. And as a rookie, that's really exciting for us long term, what that could mean. Offensively, I think she's got so much more in the tool bag than we are even seeing now. She's able to stretch the floor. She's comfortable facing. She's better off the dribble than maybe I realized when we were able to draft her. She did not run a lot of pick and rolls in the Stanford system, so it's a work in progress. I think in the long term, she's going to be a very, very good pick and roll player in our league. But she's just scratching the surface at that end. So understandably, as any rookie, there's some inconsistency. At that end, there's a little bit more inconsistency, but the tools are in the tool bag, and excited to continue to learn how to put her in position to be successful, where best to put her in position to be successful. What's so underrated is, the fan bases out there are crazy. Like, you got to get more touches. You got to get this, you got to get that, and it's like, these college coaches had 4 years of working with them. They had months and months of preparation going into each season of players learning plays. You ask these rookies coming directly from college to have less than maybe 14 practices in their pro careers, and now they're playing against the best players in the world, the most physical league in the world for women's basketball. And there's got to be some grace for these rookies, that there's going to be some inconsistency. They've got to go through it. They're all this incredible class is all going through it. Cam's no exception. And, we talk all the time. She doesn't want to let anyone down. She's incredible teammate, incredible person to coach, incredible in the locker room. She doesn't want to let us any down. And I'm telling her constantly, you're not letting anyone down. You just got to go through it. And there's going to be some really, really days where everything goes right for you. And there's going to be some days where nothing seems to go right from you. And that's a rookie. And 4 years, 5 years from now, we're going to be looking back, and you're going to have your arm around a rookie, telling them your experience and your struggles. And they're not going to believe you, but you have to go through what you're going through right now. But Cameron is a blessing. We're really, really fortunate to have her as a spark.
It is clear she is a generational talent. And to your point, right, that she's making this level of impact already, even as the offense is still on its way. It's going to be fascinating to see where she ends up as a player. I am curious, before we get to Rickea Jackson, because, again, it comes back to, for me, the things I think that you guys were hoping for out of these players, in a lot of ways you're getting right away, which is surprising. You mentioned second spectrum, and obviously the league expanded the use of that. How useful has that been for you guys? I know it's an analytics driven front office for you guys with Eli, with Reagan as well. Has it made a difference that that's now available in all the WNBA arenas?
Yeah, I think we're all navigating it. I think you can get lost in numbers. You can skew numbers to read what you want it to read at times, as we all know. But the deeper analytics, than just the traditional stat lines on a stat sheet, have been fun to watch. And, they help drive some points as a coach that you want to make. Maybe they open some eyes that you maybe have some blind spots. And so it's fun. As you mentioned, LA is a franchise really committed to the analytics. And growing that. We've had 3 interns this year that are analytic only interns, really trying to help drive numbers, help with some decision making. So it's been fun to weed through it. I can get lost in it. So, I need people to dummy it down for me sometimes, because sometimes it can get so deep that, it's too much. But it's pretty remarkable where the game has gone in a quick period analytically, and all that information is at our fingertips now.
It's a beautiful thing. It's also a beautiful thing to hear that you have support. We have both been around this game long enough to know that WNBA front offices were often a lonely place for a long time. So I'm delighted to hear that for you as well. No one can do it alone. It's great to see. I want to talk to Rickea Jackson. I want to talk to Dearica Hamby. As always, there's always more for us to talk about than we can get to in a podcast. We're going to be back in segment 3 talking about that and defining success in 2024. Right after this, I'm Howard Megdal, and you are listening to Locked On Women's Basketball. Locked On Women's Basketball is brought to you by FanDuel. And FanDuel it's fascinating, the NBA Finals on FanDuel. And I give them a lot of credit. Obviously, you can go there, you can bet on WNBA games, but for them to extend into the men's game as well, the NBA is an opportunity, the little brother league of the WNBA, for men to also play basketball. And so I don't know much about the NBA. Maybe it would help if for instance, people talked about the M Sparks as a way of identifying the Los Angeles Lakers, who I understand are a franchise out there as well. But yes, it's true. FanDuel has that. And now that the NBA is over, we can concentrate fully on the WNBA. And you can get $200 in bonus bets with any $5 bet that wins over at FanDuel. Again, $200 you can use to bet on everything from day-to-day WNBA to even on baseball, who's going to hit one out of the park. So visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and add a big win to your summer bucket list. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Curt, I'd imagine that there is not a lot of NBA talk out in LA these days after at the end of the regular season. Would that be a fair thing to say?
Would be fair. I think the one thing that we talk about is we've taken over the Clippers locker room, and I want to tell you, really, really excited about what our locker room is going to look like in crypto now for our players. It's state of the art. Really exciting about some of the new spaces that we'll now have.
I love it. I mean, again, all these small victories along the way. It's so easy in women's basketball to look back at the wins, and it's just as easy to say, gee, there's time still to go. But I wonder for you, how much do you miss commercial airline travel? It must be terrible to have to take charters now, right?
Yeah, charters have been outstanding. So really fortunate, and where I came into the league, the players had to play in the league for a certain amount of years before they could get their own hotel room. Mm-hmm. So these are the kind of stories that we share with our rookies that, we're fortunate with the growth and where our game has gone and where it's going to continue to go. Just really exciting time for women's basketball.
It is. And so one of those rookies too, Rickea Jackson, I'm fascinated by this. When I talk to scouts, to people around the league coming in, the question was not about her talent, her athleticism. It was as simple as, can she be efficient offensively? That was sort of the question coming in. And again, massive credit to the game plan you've put into place, because not only has she done that effectively, she is among rookies playing over 20 minutes per game, #1 in true shooting percentage. #1 in true shooting percentage. From that perspective, what have you seen from her offensively? Does it differ from what you necessarily had reason to expect in year one? And how are you doing it? How are you getting her to her spots this early in her career?
Well, huge credit to her and the work that she's put in. Just been an absolute sponge, been incredible to work with. A player that had some transfers, in her career at the collegiate level, played for a ton of different college coaches, So, really could never settle in. It was a new system all the time. And just working with her, she is absolutely fantastic. And if there's any reputation that she had in college, I'm telling you, she is a fantastic person, teammate, and an offensive stud. She's just really, really talented. Like Howard, this is all happening. And with Azurá Stevens' injury coming into training camp, our lack of depth maybe in the post, in our thought, got her a ton of reps. at the 4, and we were playing her as the face-up 4. We needed depth in the post. We knew Cam and Dearica, couldn't hold it down their own. We didn't know exactly how Lee was going to, function early in the season, coming back into the league. So really played Rickea at 2 positions in training camp, which is a lot for a rookie. Asking her to play not only the 4 but the 3. But to be honest, most of the reps in training camp were at the 4. And as the season's gotten on, as Cam's been able to stay on the floor more, as Lee has given us production as a backup post player, we've been able to slide her from our 6th player early in the season to our starting 3. And you just really see her blossom in her ability to play almost exclusively at the wing right now for us with our post depth. Now we'll wait and see about Cam, but it's been really, really fun. And as you mentioned, she's really efficient. She can score at 3 different levels. She's good off the bounce. She plays with a patience. She plays like in my her WNBA comparison a little bit to me is Fee, is Nafisha. She's hard to get sped up. She plays at a pace which is quicker than you think, but she plays at a pace where she can have success in different levels. She's got really good touch and offensive instincts. Her growth has been at the defensive end early in the year, and playing these really physical 4s in the best position in the world, but also guarding some electric wing players that may be, faster and more athletic than her. And she's navigating and learning it. Just last night, going against one of the GOATs and going against Dewana Bonner, what a great, opportunity. I got mad at her on a back screen during the game. And, and it's just like, well, Dewana's been doing that to everyone, in her mid-30s. And I said, you're not going to be the last person that she does that to. And, you've got to understand and just learn. It's like, this is a learning opportunity. You're guarding one of the great scorers of all time. And she just wants to get better. And the thing that I love about Rickea is she's competitive. While quiet, she's competitive. She wants to win. She's ready for this build to accelerate. And I love that mentality. We need that mentality that losing through a build is not going to become the norm or, just accepted. It has to bother us as we build and get better and better. But Rickea Jackson has a really, really bright future. So
excited to see it. And again, ahead of schedule, to my mind. In your mind, I feel like they both are. It's fascinating to me to see how fast they're growing in your system. I would be remiss, though, for us not to talk about Dearica Hamby and the fact that she is having the kind of year, better than 50% from the field, better than 40% from 3, doing so many things. Not like this is new. She was obviously 6-woman extraordinaire for Bill Laimbeer, 2-time All-Star as well. But it does feel like she's reached another level. I'm wondering if you see it in a similar way.
Yeah, can't say enough about Dearica. All the double-doubles, she's carrying us. She came into camp in great shape. But more importantly, she came in with an attitude and a mentality that she was going to lead us. And coming off of Azurá Stevens' injury, she knew she needed to even step up even more with another veteran down. And she came in and was very vocal that she, wanted to be the go-to player. She wanted to be an all-star this year. She wants a vote for MVP. Those were lofty goals, but she's backed it up. She's always been a leader by example because of her great motor. She's easy to coach. She's low maintenance. She's not in the training room. She just goes and plays every day. But it's the verbal leadership that's really taken a step up. And it's been fun to see. It's not always easy to lead from the post position. And she's really done that for us. And it's the mentality, last year was really, really hard for her. And she's the only player we had that played in all 40 games, but that was coming off an unexpected trade. She's coming off the birth of her child Legend. She probably came back faster than she even should, but she's a freak that way. Her body and her mentality to, be back on the court is amazing. And what she did last year for us was outstanding in a very difficult situation. And she's just come in mentally in a good place. Physically, she was in great shape, and you see it. And she's wearing down a little bit. This stretch is really hard. We're in a stretch of 9 games in 18 days, and in 6 different cities. Right. So, this is, even with chartering, it is a really difficult stretch. And, like, she just goes from juggernaut to juggernaut. She goes from NECA in Seattle to Fee in Minnesota, to Tina in Cheyenne and Atlanta last night. Again, AT and Breezy. So it's just like it never ends. Now, she's rewarded of getting Stewie and JJ back to back. So, and she's putting up numbers against everybody. And she's really carrying us. I can't say enough great things about Dearica.
Really been impressive. And so we're about out of time, but before we sign off here, I need people to understand, Curt, where you are in the pantheon already. You have only been a head coach in this league since 2016, but you are currently already 11th all time in regular season wins, 7 more wins, and you catch Lynn Dunn. So, big names, obviously, on this list ahead. When you think about that legacy, is it hard to believe that those kinds of numbers have piled up already? I mean, do you in some ways feel like you're relatively new in the league?
Yeah, I still think that I'm new. And I still, when I came into the league, I think there were 7 active coaches of the top 10 all-time coaches in our league in terms of wins. And so, I got baptism by fire. And fortunately, that one year was mentored tremendously well by Brian Agler. But, there was no nights off in the coaching world. And LA was a juggernaut. Minnesota, they had their 4 Olympians when I first got in the league. You just had all these coaches that had so much consistent success through the years in our league. So, you learn you chase people in front of you. You chase people that are better than you. And so early in my career, I really got to chase that. So I'm really proud that from 17, that second year, to 22, those 6 years, I had 7 in Connecticut, but those last 6 years, we won the most games in the regular season in the entire league. And so it was really fortunate. I had a great coaching staff throughout the time in Connecticut. I had great players, I had great support. So I didn't have wins to prove anymore. I could have stayed in Connecticut and won 25 to 30 games with that group. But I needed no pun intended, I needed a spark, Howard. And the LA opportunity was an opportunity that I just loved to build. And I wanted to see if we could build it again. I wanted to see the LA franchise back to where it was, when I joined the league, and I thought it could be a destination location for others. I, love living on the beach, and, those kind of things. So, I know the wins are harder to come for, but I'm energized about this build. I'm energized about our young players. We know who we are. Our turnovers have got to get better, but we will grow. We will get better. We will play our best basketball after the post-Olympic break, which I'm excited about also. I'm really excited. And, it's hard to ask a fan base to be patient because they had some losing before I got here. But bright days are ahead. We have some young players to rally behind. We have veterans that are taking and shouldering a higher role than maybe they've been asked in past years. And that's fun for those pros. So I hope that the bandwagon continues to jump on board because bright days are ahead.
No question about it. And so, Curt Miller, we appreciate your time. Real excited to see you guys up close and in person next few days here in New York as well. To our listeners, I want to thank you for making us your first listen every day. We'll be back with you tomorrow, as we are 6 days a week. Until then, I am Howard Megdal, wishing all of you a wonderful Wednesday.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.